you want to say a few things about?
Yeah, it's so fun to see her face. Yeah, so she carved and printed on a Whalen press. It's a really large, heavy piece of equipment. So a whole room of her house was dedicated to making art and print work. It would have been a bedroom, but not for her. And you kind of stand at that big wheel, and almost like you're steering a ship, you roll that soft piece of, I'm not sure what it was made out of, but the thing you can kind of see in the back that goes down over the print, and this kind of really looks like some kind of metal steel maybe roller rolls over the print, and that saves you the work of having to press the print in another way. When she first started doing it, she didn't have this press, and she used the back of a spoon a couple times for her first, I don't know, 3 or 4 prints, and that's not so much fun, especially when you're doing bigger editions. So when she moved to Maine, she bought this press. So some people notice this, some people don't, but they're all H's and M's. Holly Meade. And the one in the bottom middle is actually H. Meade, so that one's a little more elaborate. But she had a bunch of different ones. Some of them were carved out of wood, some of them were linoleum. And depending on whatever the print called for, she would use one. You know, some prints wanted to have a circular chop mark on them, and some of them wanted to have a square shaped one. um, and one interesting thing she made me think about is how much an artist's signature is part of the composition, is part of, you know, your aesthetic choices. And you know, some prints just have her signature in pencil, and there's no red chop mark because it's just a picture that didn't want a red chop mark in it. So she had all these different ways of signing her work, and typically it was one of these red H's and M's, but there was all kinds of different things depending on how the image needed to be weighted in the very corner with the little artist signature, which is such a piece of aesthetic importance. Well, she called me up after she had printed this, and she said, I did the perfect print. I can die now. And it was at a point where she was really struggling with her illness, and knew that death sooner rather than later was a possibility. And we kind of like weirdly had a laugh about that because it's kind of a funny thing to say. It was also really poignant and really touching. And this print, I can see why she was so pleased with it. It just feels totally unforced. And it's really simple. She was getting out of her own way. And it's a little out of style for her. It's very one-dimensional. It has some of the Inuit influence that she was really inspired by. It's very focused on shape. Some people even have a hard time seeing the fox. And it just feels sort of effortless to me, like it is a culmination of many, many, many years, decades of you know, studying shape and drawing, uh, and it's just so beautiful. I think she carved it on probably a cutting board or something that had a lot of this. You can see all these marks that I don't think she did those because she really loved using cutting boards and other pieces of found material, just because they have a lot of great texture already in them. And yeah, I was really happy that she shared that with me, and really happy that she just reached kind of a pinnacle in her art making, which is what we hope to do, although she had so much more to share that unfortunately she wasn't able to. But it's just such a beautiful image. Yeah, lots of foxes. We had a family of foxes living in the field outside of her house. So she was watching them, photographing them, drawing them, and they show up a lot in her artwork. And the fox was, the logo for her own gallery. So that was what was on her sign. I think the texture of the quills and fur and the stuff you find on the bodies of animals lends itself really well to carving and woodblock printing. It's just, you can really feel all that spiky texture on his body. And she also had all of her work has a lot of movement in it and a lot of energy. And I think it's because she carved pretty quickly. She wasn't getting too, she wasn't overthinking it, like she did a drawing and then she really went for it and kind of let it happen and executed quickly. And I think that's why her work always has so much vitality and so much energy. And this creature feels like he's on the move to me. I've had a lot of time to think about every single one of my mother's images because I've worked with them and I've managed her estate and I've stared at them a lot and I have them all over my house. And this one is just, it has so much going on. It has, the earth creature, the sea creature, the air creature, and they're all moving so harmoniously. And she has the one black arm that kind of looks like it's underwater with the seal and the other white arm that's kind of reaching up above her. And so much of my mother's work, even, the swimmers, it all has to do with environment and nature and connecting with the outside. And there were other themes, of course, that she explored, but that's one that just always feels present. And one reason I love this print so much is that to me the background, the gray blue is like water, but it's a wood grain, which is such a cool way to depict water, these swirls of movement in the background. And it seems, like she's swimming through them, and then you have this beautiful moon in the background, or sun, or whatever it might be to you. She did a lot of textile work in her, kind of earlier, but she always was working with fabrics, and you'll just see pattern work in in a lot of her print work too. And you can see this great pattern all over these kind of shapeless women. They have such interesting shapes, and I love this print is called Old and Young, and I love the difference in their hands, the smoothness of the younger hands, and then just this beautiful pattern on the older figures' hands. They're just so gorgeous, and the hug and the yin and yang and the puzzle pieces fitting together, and there's so much love and so much energy in this photo. I mean, in this print. It's just gorgeous. Because I had the drawing and I had the block, and it was a book about a mother and a daughter, and I don't know if this is us. I never asked it. I have always thought it, but I remember when she carved it, and I just didn't really say anything about that. It almost felt like too sacred to say it. So I don't know who it's supposed to be. It's mothers and daughters and grandmothers and daughters and female friendship and all of that good stuff. Yeah, this is probably about as large as her press did, and then she did some pieces that were even larger, and at that point she would have to be combining two different prints that were printed separately, which she did for really, really big things. You can thank me for the yellow bird. I had the wonderful privilege of access to my mother's studio, so I was strolling through that studio all the time, which is probably annoying for an artist, although I don't think she really minded. And I knew better than to chime in with thoughts if they weren't asked for, or if she wasn't ready for them yet. I was probably also, self-absorbed and not paying attention anyways. But, she did ask me what I thought about this print, and the bird took me a minute to find, and I thought, oh, it maybe needs a splash of color. So she went back and added that little subtle yellow dash on that bird. But I love this print. I love the cross work on the shirt and again the hands. They're just so gorgeous, and they look like they've done a lot of work and a lot of gardening, and they're just beautiful. Yeah, that one's it's the hands function as the nest in that print. And the title prayer speaks quite a bit, just about her kind of transcendental spiritual leanings. This was a block that I found after she had passed, and there were no prints of it. So I don't know if she hadn't gotten to printing it yet, or she, I don't know, was still carving it, or I'm not sure. But I have a cousin who's a printmaker who um, printed this, and I named it Heartbeat. So, and then we used her red chop. So this one was printed posthumously, and you can also you can see on the fingers she's got pattern work even there. It almost feels a little textile-y on the fingers. And it's more on the theme of humans connecting through, nature. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Like in the Earth Trinity piece, the one white arm and the one black arm, or like with the coon, the animal we saw earlier has a white hand and a black hand, and I think that's probably just an aesthetic choice, playing with negative and positive space, and I think the image is just stronger with the black wrist. And why do they both need to be white? Who they don't really. Lots of mermaids, and her work had a lot of spiritual, kind of more serious, thought-provoking themes, and then lots of whimsy and fun and good-humored, silly stuff too. And the mermaids are that for me, anyways. But I love this one. There's so much, again, that squiggle of the arm. You feel like she's underwater, and all that kelpie hair, and then just like the silliness of a mermaid wearing a mask is just good fun. These long fingers that just turn into water.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's almost like they're um, playing them musically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm not sure that I could, but we've got some fun and some humor and some gender roles and some masks and all kinds of things in here.
Yeah.
But I remember she sold it once to a lawyer, and she was very entertained by that. Toads are great texture. All those warty, knobby bodies, they're another great subject for print work. Yeah, I think this is the closest we're going to get to a political statement out of Holly Meade. It's kind of funny. It's kind of nonsensical. It's beautiful. It's got, I don't know. I don't know if she's teasing these characters, or these silly men fighting with their flowers, or I'm not sure. But it was a popular print. She did another version called War with Flowers that sold out a long, long time ago, and she somehow managed to be positive and explore kind of like some of the darkness of humanity, but in a way that was always focused on good or positivity, and that comes through in her artwork. Carding Brook Farm is in Brooklyn. She went out in the woods with our neighbor who still uses horses to farm and log, and drew lots of pictures and took a bunch of pictures, and did the Working in Maine series for you, Karen, and came up just with some great prints for that series. She did a couple of John logging and doing some tractor work, and she did some Bunny Gorski throwing pots on the potter's wheel, and they're just really wonderful prints. This was another um, in the field piece where she went and watched some men. I can't remember where it was, but it was somewhere where they still harvest ice, and I don't know if they're just doing it for fun at this point. But it was, she went and camped out on the ice and again took pictures and drew sketches and um, yeah, so it was in plein air. Yeah, he's in there in all those icicles, and that print is actually carved on an old headboard. So again, it was a found piece of material to do her work on. You can see the shape of the headboard of the bed. This is the Sedgwick dock. I was out on the Sedgwick dock with my boyfriend in the middle of the night, and my mom, I don't know what she thought had happened to me, but she came down and you know, crashed the party and but made this beautiful print of a starry night sky on the Sedgwick dock. Well, we had several cats over the years, but in Maine we had two cats.
Yeah, and so this is, I guess this is out of the book. Um, it's interesting because the cat's posing right by the woodblock.
Yeah, we've got the drawing for the print. So you've got the sketch in the upper right hand corner, and then you've got the block that was carved from the drawing, and then you've got the print, and then you've got the cat. And she did a lot of cats because they were just always lying around and striking poses. And if you're someone who's constantly picking up a pencil, and the cats were there.
What's really interesting too is for an artist, is the cat stays posing in that position for a long time.
I know. They do. They're the best models you can get.
They really,
And they sort of know that they should be drawn and worshipped. It's kind of in their psyche too, so even better. That one's me. I know that one's me for sure. With a cat we had when we lived in Massachusetts.
yeah, I just love the feeling of this print.
And that was one of her very first prints, when before she had experimented with color and when she was still printing by pressing with the back of a spoon. This was pre-press. This one just makes me feel so happy. You know, it's that childhood happiness feel. And she did a lot of children. She drew a lot of children and really loved children. So that's a theme that you'll see again and again in her work, and kind of the joy and preciousness of being a child. Yep, lots of movement and kind of the large exaggerated hands that you'll see in all of her figure work. Yeah, so much movement. All those marks that you really feel it. Yes, she did actually. She did a lot of ballet and like more formal training when she was younger, and then she took a class here and there for fun and liked to move around, but not in a professional way.
She also had a lot of prints where she did personifications of animals. This one here is called Blue Lobster. He's great. It's 11 by 20 inches. You want to talk about, is there anything you could say? I have several examples of how she.
Yeah, and you'll find human faces on animals a lot, and in this case, hands. And I love the rubber band on the hands. But yeah, that's. I think she was sometimes able to connect with how an animal might be feeling, or that's how she was able to connect with the feeling she was having by thinking about how an animal might feel.
This one here is called He Can Be Kind of Prickly.
Yeah, she overheard someone say that at a party. He can be kind of prickly, and that's how this print came about. Yep, she did a couple of men hiding in gorilla costumes.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know if I can speak to that, but what was going on there, but they're all kind of fun. They're all kind of silly and also thought-provoking. There's just so much going on in this one. It's one of those prints you can look and look and look, and more is revealed to you the more you look, which is always a good sign in artwork. Um, yeah, it's just beautiful, and she was a very spiritual person, and was interested in many different faiths, and um, educated herself, read a lot of books about spirituality and different practices. And yeah, that's just gorgeous. There's so much great pattern work happening in the background of that one too. I mean, you first look at the plane, but if you look a little further, there's so much good stuff carved in there.
This next one is called The Mercy of God.
Oh yeah, do you want me to read the quote she had written on the bottom of it? All the wickedness in the world which man may do or think is no more to the mercy of God than a live coal dropped in the sea. So you can see the coal on the bottom there, this tiny little orange dot, and you know, it, it's another really interesting, thought-provoking print that, we all feel horrible and wicked and guilty and full of shame sometimes. And I think her spiritual journey, part of it is to forgive yourself. And this print is such a beautiful depiction of that. And again, beautiful pattern work, beautiful hands, large, the hands you see again and again in her work. And I noticed not too long ago that there are little holly leaves all over this figure at the top, and I don't know if that was intentional, but oh yeah, good things coming out. This is kind of like a classic kind of Holly Meade belief system. Good things coming down. She was always a believer in um in good stuff, positivity, kindness, leaving the door open for something good to happen. And I love this angel just flying by, and you can kind of just imagine him shooting down like a bunch of wonderful stuff on some situation or person, or and it makes you feel good. It's my mother made artwork that made you feel good, and that's not to say that making artwork that doesn't make you feel good isn't also important and intriguing, but it wasn't really my mother's MO. This print came about, our farmer neighbor brought over some eggs on New Year's Day and, said Happy New Year's. And this was not long after my mother moved to Maine, and she was, we weren't familiar with, fresh eggs. We were grocery store egg people before that. And these were eggs that were different sizes, long, skinny, narrow ones, and really short, round ones. And some were blue and some were green, and some still had a little feather stuck on them. And we were I was just like, whoa, these are some funny looking eggs, and they're farm eggs, and they are the most delicious eggs you'll ever eat. And it's just a very auspicious gift to receive on New Year's Day is fresh farm eggs. She carved this one when she was sick, and part of her, care routine for herself was positive imagery. She did a lot of like meditation and positive imagery, and would visualize health. And one of her visualizations was just closing her eyes and seeing all these healthy, beautiful blooms and flowers just blossoming, radiant blooms out of her body. So this was one of her go-to images. Oh yeah, I just found this in my grandfather's photo albums. So I think she was in RISD. It's so in the 70s, when she was in art school, and I just love this picture, and so she's doing a self-portrait that's a mirror on her right side. And it's amazing the skill she had. And she was probably in her early 20s, yeah, when she drew this. And she did a lot of life-size self-portraits. I have a couple of them. And she had, just this innate skill and some training for drawing and shape, and it's just gorgeous. So here she is on the coast of Maine, breathing it in, loving it. Maine, this landscape that we live in here was truly her the home of her soul. She was very happy here, and just the salty, rocky coast, and she just looks like she's loving it in this picture, just taking that deep breath of Maine. And there we are. Yep, she was a fun mom to have. She was great. That sounds like Tom Curry.
Yes, I have a question. Who were some of your mom's influences? Are there any artists that your mom was influenced by?
Oh man. Well, I know you and she had once talked about Egon Schiele. Am I getting his name right?
Right?
Yep. So that one, and the print Old and Young, which we happen to be looking at right now, that was right out of one of his books, very closely inspired by him, and also his concentration on hands and the human body.
Right.
But she loved Matisse. She loved Georgia O'Keeffe. I mean, there were just, so our house was so full of art books. I mean, I probably wouldn't do it justice. She was really interested in Inuit art also. I would have to think about that for a minute, because we just had bookcases and bookcases of artwork.
You remember Michael Jocks?
Um,
The one that was in her house of the girl jumping rope.
oh yes, is that his name? That
Yep.
was her first piece of art she ever got. Her mom gave it to her when she was in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He showed in Hamilton, and my parents bought a couple of his prints too at
Oh
the
wow.
art show.
Yeah, she really liked that print. And yeah, she had it was hanging in her house always.
And also, she likes Suri Beckman's work.
Oh, Siri Beckman. Yes, I meant to mention that actually. A lot of her animal work, I feel like, is an ode to Siri's animal work. Like the porcupine and the fox and the raccoon, just like large black and white animals with lots of texture and focus on the fur and the texture of the fur. That I feel like it was directly inspired by Siri Beckman, who's just the most amazing printmaker.
You remember the bear?
I have it now. So when my mother moved to Maine, and shifted some money around to make that real estate purchase happen, one of the financial fantasies she made come true is she bought a large bear by the printmaker Siri Beckman, and it hung above the fireplace in all its glory and honor.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Karen. And thanks everyone who continues to celebrate her work and her spirit. It's heartwarming to me.